All right, thanks everybody for joining us today. I am bringing up my screen here. It's taking a second. There we go. All right, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to be talking about just the bigger picture of data in the stormwater sector, and also focusing specifically on the e-reporting rule that's come out of EPA and how that ties into the MS4 sector. So my name is Seth Brown. I'm the executive director for the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance. And you can see here we've got Second Nature and ESRI that are part of this as well with NMSA. So thanks for joining us today. Just the overview here, we're going to do a quick intro, opening, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you some context of where we're going, what we're going to be covering, which is what we're doing now, and some housekeeping as well. Then we're going to have the presentations, and we're going to hear from EPA to talk about the overview of the e-reporting rule. So if you don't know that much about it, and we did a survey in our registration, and it sounded like about half or over half, a little bit over half of you don't know about the e-reporting rule. So that's a good thing that we're going to be covering it. So you'll hear about the basics of that. We'll also hear about the role of GIS, big data, data standards, and data schema in the context of kind of the evolution of data in the for the MS4 sector. And then we're going to be talking about e-reporting rule and data standards, and from the MS4 perspective. So from MS4 program managers and stormwater program managers, what are the implications of this? So, and then we'll do we'll have hopefully 15, 20 minutes, something like that, for a Q&A, and then we'll wrap up. The speakers today will be Kerry Johnston with the US EPA in this order. There's Kerry right there. He's given the big hello sign. Dave Watchell from ESRI. There you go. Well done, Dave. Jason Yoho with Second Nature. There it is. Thank you. And Randy Neprash, he's the vice chair, and everyone knows him, vice chair of NMSA, and he heads up the Minnesota City Stormwater Coalition. So that's the lineup today, and all the speakers are going to give a little bio and their background. I'm not going to go through that now. They know themselves better than I know them. So just so everyone knows, again, we're recording this. So just as an FYI, the recording of the event is going to be made available. So you're going to get an email, I think, within a day or two after we're done here, and that will have a link to our YouTube channel, and this will be posted there. So if there's something that you missed, or you want to share it with friends and family or whatever, then you'll be able to do that. If you want to see these slides, all the slides are available if you look at your app for the GoToWebinar app, there's a handouts kind of pull down. And if you go there, there should be 5 different PDFs that represents the 5 slideshows that are available. So and rather than having to ask us for it, they're all there. So go check that out. You can do that right now. There will be PDHs available. Just let me know if you guys want it. No, folks that are on as attendees cannot talk. So the best way to ask questions is to use the question function, and we will do that anytime. But if you do have some kind of technological issue, you can't hear us or something like that, then use that chat function, and we'll keep an eye on that. So that's the housekeeping. If there's any other questions on housekeeping, let me know in the chat function. I do want to give a little overview of NMSA real quickly. So for those who don't know NMSA, what we're about, NMSA is an alliance or a coalition of state organizations. All the states that are shown there in blue are our state members. We've got 23 states. We cover over 50% of the population and cover about 70% of the MS4 universe in these states. So we've only been around for about 2.5 years, so we're still relatively new. If you haven't heard about us, that doesn't hurt our feelings too much, but hopefully you will now and in the future. And so we're a coalition. We don't have individuals. We've got state organizations as members, but we also can have affiliate members, whether that corporate members, whatnot, and individual MS4s has started to join us too. Such as Baton Rouge just joined us as an example. Just real quickly, what we're about, and oh, Randy's got a comment he wants to make.
I'm not seeing your slides changing, Seth.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Huh, interesting. Thank you for letting me know. I don't know why that is. There we go. Okay. So you haven't seen any of the slides. That's great. Okay. Okay, well, just real quickly, there's nothing to go back over. We don't have time for that. But if there's any questions, let me know. Anyway, so for the motivations for the formation for NMSA, we just want to have a unified voice for this, historically nascent and disparate sector. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. We want to make sure that we strengthen the networks, and we want to increase the public awareness and the political awareness and value and image of stormwater. Really, and our vision is very simple. We want to provide clean water to the nation. We want to do that through effective and efficient programs that are based upon data and science. So that ties in really with the theme of today. We cover a lot of areas, support sector information. We want to make sure that we give the MS4 sector the support they need. So that's really our top mission. We're a 501c3, so that is our mission. We also want to focus a lot on messaging and communication. So you hear, this is another example of messaging, communication, and education. Of course, we do policy and advocacy, and this is a policy topic. So we're kind of covering a lot of the areas, but a lot more that could be said. If you go to our website, you can learn a lot more on that. So, and our leadership is right here. As again, Randy Neprash is our vice chair. Scott Taylor is our chair from California. Jennifer Watson is our treasurer, and you see that I'm the executive director. So again, to learn more, go to nationalstormwateralliance.org. If you can. So, okay, now we're going to get on with things. Before we do that, I'm going to launch a quick poll, just real quickly, so we all know who is on here. So I'm going to launch a poll that asks you your background and your affiliation. So take a minute to just let us know. It's our intention and our hope is to get as many folks from the public, the MS4 program manager staff population as possible. Obviously, there's a big role for consultants to play in this as well. So take a second. Oh, we've got about 75. Okay. All right. So we've got about 80% that voted. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to close this poll, and I am going to see if I can share it. Oh, there we go. I'll share it with everybody so we can see. Yep. Sorry. Share it again. So you can see we've got a majority of the folks here are indeed stormwater program managers, which is great. And obviously private, on the side, private side consulting is a big presence too. So thank you for sharing that. We've got about 323 folks on with us today. So again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So, all right. So without further ado, I am going to pass the controls over to Carrie, who's going to walk us through the e-reporting. Are you ready for it, Carrie?
I'm ready. Can you hear me, Seth?
Absolutely. Sounds good. I'm going to pass it over to you. Great.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And I really appreciate the invitation to chat with everyone here. The Stormwater Alliance came to me and said, hey, we should push out more information on your rule. And I said, that's a great idea. I love that idea. And let me know, Seth, if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So the first slide is really one of my favorite slides, this one right here, because maybe we're familiar with this, but when you MS4 program managers, you have to compile and summarize all of the work that you've done in the year to protect urban streams and manage stormwater. You file a report, and then it just goes off. It goes off somewhere. And this is a different sector. This deals with industrial discharges to sewage treatment plants. That's managed by the pretreatment program. But you can see, and this is from some years ago from our San Francisco office, the reports are, some reports are big, some are thin. They're all pretty much non-standard. And my poor colleague in Region 9, he had to go through all of these reports. And I look at this stack of paper and it looks to me like a haystack, because that poor person has to go through all of those reports to find issues where maybe more attention needs to be paid, or maybe there are good examples of controlling industrial stormwater that we want to promote. And in general, it's just really hard. The data are on paper, they're not centralized, they're not standardized, and it's just, frankly, a system that we're trying to move away from. So the electronic reporting rule was published in 2015, and it shifts the data from the submission from paper to electronic reporting. It's intended to save time and resources for both the regulated community as well as the states. It's about improving transparency, which can elevate the importance of data and environmental performance. And we're going to be using current technology to obtain more accurate, timely, complete, and consistent information about the NIPD's program, the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit program. This is a program under the US Clean Water Act. So the scope of the rule is pretty big. It covers construction sites, it covers facilities that have individual permits, it covers sewer systems, both separate and combined. It also covers the MS4 sector, concentrated animal feeding operations, biosolid generators. So it's really broad, and and because it's so broad, it's taking us a number of years to migrate from paper to electronic reporting. So it's not unusual that about half of today's registrants haven't heard about the E rule, because as you'll see in a couple slides later on, we're actually we're migrating electronic reporting in stages, and we're just now getting to the MS4 sector. This box here is in black. I've kind of pulled it out because these are what we call the majors. It's a term that identifies some of the largest dischargers, and for decades we've had good information about where they are, where they're located, what the limits are, were they inspected, were there any enforcement actions. And that's because we were relying a lot on data from the states. The states would be taking data off of paper discharge monitoring reports, keying in the data and sending it to us. And we had very little data on everyone else. And so we're doing two things. We're basically shifting the data entry burden and simplifying the data entry burden by having the data come in electronically. And we're expanding the data that states share with us so that we have a more complete and accurate picture of the NPDES program. What we tried to do in the electronic reporting rule was to make very clear what reports needed to come in electronically, and we spelled them out. So we listed them in the rule, and you can see these are all of the reports that need to come in electronically for this sector. This is the MS4 program report. And then you'll see after each report, I've got a phase listed, phase 1 or phase 2. And that's because this was such a large effort, we had to break it up into 2 different phases. So phase 1 deals with the discharge monitoring report. So your colleagues in the Public Works Department who manage sewage treatment plants, they're very familiar with this report. Basically, they have a permit with limits, monitoring requirements, and reporting requirements. And usually monthly, they'll summarize all of the data, the analytic data, wastewater sampling data they've collected, and put that on DMR forms, which used to be paper and are now electronic. And those needed to come in, those now need to come in electronically. And then we've also got something similar for the other aspect of sewage treatment plants, which is sludge. When you treat wastewater, you produce clean water and sludge, and you need to manage that sludge in a way that's protective of public health and the environment. And there's an annual reporting requirement for that. And EPA included that report in phase 1 where it runs the program, and that's most states. That's 42 of the 50 states. So DMRs, biosolids, that's phase 1. Everything else is phase 2. These are all the data we're getting from the permittees, and we're also going to be getting data from states. States also generate data in terms of they issue permits, they conduct inspections, they do violations and enforcement actions. So they're the generators of the data, and that's data that they will be sharing with us. So I like pictures, and here you have a picture of the biosolids annual report management. Like, this is how we would collect all of the biosolids annual reports, and it was kind of a mess. And so you can see there's some big thick binders and some skinny folders. So trying to go through all of these reports to find issues of non-compliance or issues where attention needed to be paid, or even where there was good practice, examples that we wanted to highlight, was really, really difficult. Well, now on the electronic reporting form, we make it clear exactly how we want the data to be entered, what data we need, and we've also got detection built in. So if there's a limit, in this case it's arsenic, you can't have more than 75 milligrams per kilogram of arsenic in your sludge. So if you type in 75.01, it's going to flag that as an exceedance and let you know. And if that's correct, if that is an exceedance, then we'll probably call you and follow up and see what's going on. But if it's a mistake, maybe you meant to type 7.501, then it's a way for us to make sure that those errors can be corrected even before that error creeps into our system. So the phases, we've got phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 deadline was December of 2016. And as I said, that's for the DMR data flow and the biosolids in report. And phase 2 is everything else. So for phase 2, we're pushing, we originally had the deadline at December of 2020, and we've pushed that to December of 2025. And that gives us and the states more time to build the tools that we need to build to collect this data. So states have two choices. States can build their own tool, so they can build their own electronic reporting tool to collect the phase 2 data, or they can elect to use EPA software, which is called the NPDES Electronic Reporting Tool, or NET. So if EPA collects the data on behalf of the state, or where EPA runs the NPDES program, it's going to be a NET. And if states build their own tools, they'll collect the data themselves and then share that data with us through a back-end process. So either way, the rule specifies the data that must be collected, managed, and shared electronically. So once we've got all of this phase 1 and phase 2 data, we'll be able to generate a report. It's actually spelled out in the rule. It's called the NPDES Non-Compliance Report. And it basically shows all of the facilities and where there are issues of non-compliance. Let's look at some more pictures. So let's look at phase 1 progress, and you can see this is the picture we saw before with giant stacks of paper. Our first year of reporting, we got it down. That looks pretty good. Still not exactly great in that we had 640 paper submissions, but this kind of tells me that even through our best efforts, we were calling people, emailing people, who sent out postcards. There was a lot of stuff that we did to push out the news on electronic reporting. We still didn't get perfect compliance, but we were making great strides. And the next year, we got even better. We got that down to 94 paper submissions. So that was good. That was our second year. And then the year after that, we got it down to 52. And then last year, we got it down to 14. So we're moving in the right direction. And we're still finishing up the reporting for this year. The report is due February of 2021. So I hope to have a picture of my colleague in Region 7 where they collect these data of him holding a box empty upside down. So we want to get to 0 paper submissions. That's the goal. I mentioned the DMR, and I don't have any pictures, but hopefully this graph, these 2 bar charts can convey the real success that we've had, which is that when we started electronic reporting for DMRs back in 2009, it was kind of a pilot. We had 24 facilities. It kind of kept going up and up. And then we published the rule in 2015. And then we've had this giant wave of facilities now reporting their DMRs electronically. And this is only showing you those facilities that are using our software, which is called NetDMR. States have their own, some states built their own tools for collecting these data, and then they share that data with us. So if you want to track the progress, showing which facilities have switched over from paper to electronic reporting, you can go to this link right here, and then you can see that. So overall, between the biosolids annual report and the NetDMR, we have a solid base of understanding of the program, coding, the applications. We have an infrastructure built. So we feel pretty confident that moving forward, we'll be implementing phase 2 in an expeditious manner. So because phase 2 is so large, we had to think through, okay, well, where can we get the initial biggest bang for our buck? And so we focused on those categories that had the most regulated entities. So at first, we focused on construction stormwater. So we pushed that out. And then industrial stormwater, we have an application for that. We have a couple permits in our Gulf of Mexico that have a lot of facilities. So we pushed out an application for that. And then in doing all of this application development, we're working closely with our state partners. We have a work group, and they recommended moving out into other sectors. They recommended moving out into the aquaculture sector. So these are the fish farms. There are 10 permits across the country. So we've done that. So we moved. So this is kind of like our development that we've been doing for the past 2-3 years. And now, and for tracking our implementation of phase 2, we've got a dashboard down here, and then you can see across the country which permits and which program reports are going to be using our software, Net, and which states will be building their own tools. And then you'll be able to see the status of those tools in terms of whether or not they're deployed. So I've mentioned a couple times that we've been working with the states, and we've spun up a number of technical work groups, diving into each one of these sectors: biosolids, pretreatment, sewer overflows, CAFOs, stormwater, which includes the MS4 sector. The recommendations and findings of that group are documented in what we call technical papers, and those are available off of our website. So if you really, really want to get into the weeds, these papers are a good resource. So I talked a lot about what we've done in the past and where we're going in the near future. And what we're working on now are these 5 sectors. So there are 8 states that have the biosolids program, the federal biosolids program. 3 of those have elected to use our software. So we're onboarding these 3 states into Net. We also have a permit that covers pesticide application. We're focusing on the MS4 sector now. We're actually building applications for Delaware, Rhode Island, and Region 1, which is our New England states. We have another type of general permit that covers groundwater remediation and dewatering. This is whether there's contaminated groundwater or construction site, there's pumping of groundwater and discharging. Those are general permits that cover that. And then we have a reporting requirement when there's non-compliance, when a municipality has a sewer spill and they need to report that to the state. We're going to convert that from a paper to an electronic submission. So why are we selecting these 5, or why did we select these 5? Well, it's a mix of EPA and state permits, a large number of facilities, and includes compliance monitoring data. These are the program reports. We have interested regional and state partners who want to work with us, and we can reuse some of the earlier applications that I talked about. I mentioned the NIPD's non-compliance report. This is required in our rulemaking. We have a deadline for making this available to the public, actually 2 deadlines. The first deadline is for our phase 1 data. That's the DMRs and the biosolids annual report. That will come in December of 2022. We'll make that available to the public. And then we have another deadline, which is 2026. And that's as we get phase 2 data, we'll fold that into the NNCR and make it available to the public. Right now, we're working with states, and we've been working with states to develop this report. States will have a year to test drive it and make sure it looks right. And then on or about December of 2022, we'll make it available to the public. So what I'd like to do now is just to give a quick demonstration on what we've done today in the biosolid sector, and this kind of give you a sense of what it might look like for the MS4 sector. And then what I'll do is I'll show you some of the wireframes that we've developed for the MS4 application we're building for Rhode Island. So I can't show you the MS4 application, but I can certainly give you a good sense of what it'll look like. So what I will do is I will go to my browser, and Randy, can you see my browser? Or Seth, can you see my browser?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah, and just an FYI, you got about 10 minutes, if that's okay. Just a quick FYI.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So our front gate into EPA's reporting is the Central Data Exchange, what we call CDX, and it's just cdx.epa.gov. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you the test version, and actually everyone has access to this. So it's test.epacdx.net. It has the same look and feel. You can just play around with the applications. So everything that I'm doing on the screen, you could do at home if you were interested. So I'm going to sign in. So everyone's got a username and password. And then you've got these rows on your My CDX tab that show you all of the different program services. These are all of the data flows. And you'll probably only have maybe 1 or 2, but I do a lot of testing, so I've got a bunch. So here is the Net Biosolids program service, and you can see I've got a role. So your role might be, if you're a junior engineer and you only prepare the report, you would have the preparer role. But if you're the senior plant manager or senior engineer and you're going to sign it, then you would have the signatory role. So I've clicked on that role. Now I'm going over to the biosolids application. And when you first land here, you're not going to have any facilities here, because you basically, for security reasons, we want to make sure that only the right people can file a report on the right facilities. So initially you won't see any facilities, but then you can click on this bar to request access. So I've done that. Let me pull up a facility I have access to. And you can see here, these are all the users. There's me and another person, and we have, these are all the permissions that we have for this facility. So it looks like I can create a report, and indeed, all you have to do is click add. Or if you've started a report, like you can see I've done here, you can come down here and just click edit. And this is how the application looks. And you can see all of these green check marks. This shows you that everything in that section is good to go. What's nice is that these sections can collapse and open, and as you fill out the form, it kind of spoon feeds you along. And it's also a smart form. So if, for example, you're managing your biosolids as Class A, you're only going to see Class A options for vector attraction reduction. In the interest of time, I'm not going to fill out the form other than to show you that it's pretty clean, it's simple, good look and feel. It's very, I would say, very user friendly. And when you're all done and you sign the form, then it looks like this. It shows you the certification date. It shows you when that report was certified. And then we have a public access website. And if we go down to search options, biosolids, it's going to take 1 second. Okay, and then we'll select 2020. And then hit search. And then what this does is this is our Echo website sending a service call to the NET application, asking for some basic information for the year 2020. And you can see here all of the reports that were submitted in the year 2020. So, and this is pulling it live from our application. So as facilities file their reports, they show up here. So that's kind of how it's going to, how it's working today. That's going to be a good model for the MS4 sector. So for the MS4 sector, as I said, we're working with a couple states and our New England office. So we're going to, we've got a draft form set up. And this is where small MS4s would be applying for coverage. So they're going to tell us who they are, who the contact information is, some general information about their MS4, receiving waters, what are the water bodies in their area. We're going to be getting asking about the minimum control measures, the 6 minimum control measures, any TMDL requirements, discharges to impaired waters without a TMDL, questions about historic preservation, the swamp, any additional notes and certifications. So each one of these sections, like you saw with the biosolids application, will open up. So let's take a look at one of them. So here's the entity. So here it's already filled out. Here's the name. Is it a phase 2? Who's the operator? What's the operator type? It's municipal. What's the permit number? The population. Contact information, first name, last name. You can see fields that are required, have the nice little star. We're going to ask for a general sense of the aerial extent of the MS4. So that could be provided through a map or a URL. Information on the receiving water body. They have some nice features built in where things can be looked up. So anytime you see a little action button, that means we're trying to leverage existing data. And wherever possible, we're trying to minimize the amount of times that you have to enter in or type in new data. If it's data we already have, or if it's data we can link to, we're trying to bring it into the form. And so this is the public education and outreach minimum control measure, where you're going to be identifying who's responsible, and these are the various venues for that Rhode Island wanted to include. So you would fill out these sections, and you can see these sections here these little hyperlinks refer to conditions in the permit. So these are things that are called out in the permit. And so you may basically be using the form to provide the necessary information. So I went screaming right through that. I apologize for making this short. Probably the best thing that I can leave you with is my email. If you want to see the application or get more information, we're about to, we're, as I said, working with a couple states in our New England office. It would be great to have some testers, some people that could give us feedback. So if you're interested in working with us, feel free to email me. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Seth.
Great. Thank you very much, Carrie. A couple quick clarifying questions. First is the link for the net, the net tool, is that link that you talked about, is that included in your slides at all? If so, then people can just download that PDF. If not, then you might want to put it up here real quickly, because that was something that came up. And while you're doing that, Carrie, I'll ask another quick question, and that's if there's a question is, why don't you show the MS4 tools, since most of us on the webinar here today are MS4 program managers?
Yeah, it's not yet built.
Right. It's
we're working on it. Hang tight.
So yeah, related to that, so that was a great question from Heidi. Thank you, from Salinas. I wanted to also mention that you know, on that front, 2025 is the deadline, right? So that seems an awfully far away. Is that something, because this got pushed back from 2020 to 2025, correct?
Correct.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that's really the deadline for states. It's a motivator. The deadline is really a motivator for EPA in the states. Obviously, we don't want to wait until December 2025 and then roll out everything all at once. And so what you're going to be seeing over the next 5 years is things being staged and moved out to electronic reporting, and MS4s is one of the next sectors, along with the other 4 that I mentioned.
Yep. So I wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Carrie. And you get the URL that's up there. And if you guys can't see it, let us know. And you know, we'll get it to everybody in the follow-up email that goes going to go to everybody. And the other thing is, I want everybody to know that this is between EPA and the states. However, hopefully we'll work with Carrie for the next, you know, through this duration and others to make sure that everyone's on board. But really, this is something you guys have to work with your states, and we are going to be working with state organizations as well to try to make sure that we can provide as much information as possible, so this doesn't creep up on folks. We don't. Carrie, thank you very much. I'm going to move to Dave Watchell. And as I do that, I did want to mention there are 2 other speakers that I failed to recognize, and I apologize for that. That is Rachel Urban, who's with EPA, and Greg Shaner, also with EPA. So Greg might have some difficulties. He's traveling as he's doing this, so that may or may not work, but we definitely know Rachel's here. So if there's some questions about policy as we get into this, and how MS4s, and how you guys are, if you have thoughts about how is this going to affect my MS4, again, we're going to be, Randy Nieprash is going to be talking about that, but we do have some other folks at EPA that are on the permitting side that can address that. So anyway, with that said, Dave, I'm going to pass along to you. If you can give a quick overview, like your background, Dave, your title and all that stuff, as well as your information, that'd be great. And then I will stop talking now.
Sure, Seth. Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be participating in the webinar today. My name is Dave Watchell, and I'm the director of our water sector at ESRI. I'll talk about, if you don't know who we are, I'll talk a little bit about that. And today I'm going to talk about GIS standardization in the stormwater industry, and really from my perspective, how it relates to the interest and the role of technology providers. So just can you verify that you are seeing my screen here?
Yep, we got it. Looks great.
All right, good. So if you don't know about ESRI, we are a GIS company. We build a software called ArcGIS, and we really believe that GIS can make a difference in every organization. That really is our DNA. But one of the points I want to make here is not necessarily about who we are, but who we are not. We're not stormwater engineers, we're not stormwater program managers, and we're not regulators. And we don't really have a stake in the stormwater industry other than wanting to provide the best-in-class GIS technology that we can to help the industry solve its problems. And by doing that, that's what will make us successful in our commercial venture. So today, I'm going to talk about data in the context of a GIS framework. ESRI's participation in providing GIS data and schemas and models in the stormwater industry up to this point, and then how we can serve the industry moving forward. So to get started, I have a few definitions that I want to go through to set some context. So the first one is a data standard, and here we'll just use the EPA definition. So data standards are documented agreements on representations, format, definition, structuring, tagging, transmission, manipulation, use, and management of data. So therefore, standards establish items like the name or the description or the notes or the XML tags of data. A schema is then really the blueprint or the architecture for how that data will live inside a database or inside a software system. It defines the tables, the fields in each table, the relationships between the fields and the tables, and the grouping of objects within that database, or now in web technology, in a web service. And so on the screen here, we just have an example of our older water wastewater data schema from 2005. So the last definition that we'll look at is the standard data model definition. So the standard applied to an industry. A standard data model or industry standard data model is a data model that's widely applied in some industry and can be shared amongst competitors to some degree. They are often defined by standards bodies, can be defined by database vendors or operating system vendors. So if you think of the role of Microsoft in the relational database, going back a couple of decades. So here on the screen, we have an example from the water sector of a industry standard, and that's from NASCO. So NASCO sets industry standards for the assessment, the maintenance, and the rehabilitation of underground infrastructure. They do this to improve and standardize how data is collected and how it's used to repair or replace infrastructure. Now, in the case of NASCO, they go so far as to certify vendors on their data standard. So as a vendor, there are decisions to be made whether or not to certify the software on the data standard. Now, in the case of NASCO, ESRI adopted the PACP standard in our sewer solution for pipeline assessment, but we didn't certify our software on it. However, we do have partners, particularly in the CCTV space, that do certify their software on the NASCO standard. So it really gets into various factors such as how the standard would impact what a software company could do to evolve and extend their software. It might pertain to if you don't certify, you might have competition that puts you as a disadvantage. So there are different factors to consider there. So over time, the evolution of technology drives changes in data and data schemas. And in the last 20 plus years that I've been in the water and the GIS industry, I've seen 3 major shifts in technology that actually drove changes in our industry models. So what happens is that their new technology comes along. This drives new data formats, which creates new blueprints for data structures, which are really the logical representation of that data. Those new blueprints turn into new conceptual representations of that data, which get incorporated into software solutions. Then users use the data, their requirements drive adaptation of those conceptual models, and then new technology comes along again and advances, and there's something new to have to deal with from a technology provider or from someone who uses that technology. So if you've known ESRI long enough, you can remember back to the days of coverages and shapefiles prior to the year 2000, and that was a very flat data structure. In 2000, ESRI began incorporating relational databases into our software. And at that time, ESRI worked with many of our closest customers and partners to develop a common data model for that new schema for the industry. Then stormwater was included in a sewer storm combined model. That model was widely adopted by customers around the world, and our partners built their technologies on top of it. And it served as, what I'd say, quote unquote, would be the standard GIS data model for water and wastewater for about a decade. And when I use the term standard here, this is not based on a formality of, maybe association or somebody certifying or saying that was the standard. It just rather came to be because of the widespread adoption of that model. Then in 2009, ESRI began providing what we referred to as industry templates that grew into formal solutions. And when the solutions team started to expand across multiple industries, they quickly realized that they needed a common model to deploy from. So they created a new model. And this is what we referred to as the local government information model. This model then quickly became the new standard for GIS users because we built all of our solutions on top of it. And so if you wanted the solutions to just work, it was easier to migrate your data from the old water wastewater model to the new LGIM, as we called it, because your solutions would just work, and it was easier to adopt the new data model versus customizing all of the solutions. Then in 2012, ArcGIS Online came about, and that drove a new web standard, and we started to decouple the LGIM, as we called it, into individual services because they were easier to deploy in a web environment. Then in 2018, we released a new technology for network management. This replaced our older geometric network technology for managing networks with a modern web services-based architecture for managing complex networks, which we call the utility network. So the utility network is really the new blueprint, the logical structure for how things connect and relate to each other, and the rules for those interactions. And so now our solutions are being built on top of that new framework, that new schema. So where that puts us today is the stormwater data management solution is built on top of that new data structure. So what does that mean? What is that solution? So the stormwater data management solution is a fairly basic, but it's extremely useful solution that provides capabilities to create, collect, maintain, and visualize stormwater data in a GIS. It currently does not include apps or capabilities to do things like conducting an inspection or tracing a network or doing any kind of repeatable analysis, but some of those capabilities will be out later this year and into next year. But our system is highly configurable, so partners and customers can take our technology and configure it for those workflows and then share that across the industry, which is commonly done today. So the value of that current solution is that it's built upon new technology that will likely serve as the best schema available for hopefully another decade. And the model is based on previous decades of user experience, resulting in a model that provides the most common features and attributes, not every feature and attribute, but the most common across the industry needed to manage stormwater assets. So the opportunity for the industry is to work with ESRI and other vendors to incorporate additional capabilities based on the data requirements that you need to do your work every day. So as an example, if you need tools to collect data in the field on stormwater BMPs, tell us what those data requirements are, and we'll incorporate those into our solutions, or at least the most common ones, in the best way that we can. So where does that leave us, and where does the industry go from here? From the concept of data standards is that there's a lot of push-pull stakeholders that will contribute to how it plays out. You have vendors like ESRI and Second Nature, who will provide more insight into the commercialization component of this topic here in a minute. You have regulatory agencies, you have associations like NMSA and others. And then most importantly, there are the stormwater utilities and the agencies that I believe are really at the helm in steering whatever kind of standardization best suits their need to get the work done. So what's ESRI's role in this? Well, we will continue to collaborate with industry stakeholders. It's in our best interest to provide the best possible solutions that apply most widely across the industry. We'll continue to provide the common framework for GIS data, and we'll continue to deliver and extend our solutions for helping you to get your work done. So we'll provide the schema. Other stakeholders will provide the standards and the model, and then we'll incorporate that model on top of our schema into our solutions, again, in the best way that we can to meet the most common needs across the industry. And then there will be other organizations and partners that will build additional capabilities on top of that. So you have to tell us what those requirements are. And so I want to, at this point, thank you for letting me participate and letting ESRI have a seat at the table. And Jason will continue this discussion a little bit further with a little bit more detail. And I failed to provide my email here on the screen, but if you want to get in contact with me about how to collaborate with ESRI, my email is dwatchell@esri.com, and we'll try to make sure in a way to share that a little bit more effectively here throughout the webinar. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Dave. Jason, I'm going to make you the presenter. We got about 7-8 minutes left. So sorry, just wanted to give an FYI on that. You should let me know if you should be the presenter now. You should have that, Jason. Let me know if there's any challenges with that.
Should be working. How's that? Can you see it?
That looks good. That looks good. I will drop off.
Cool. Let's see if I can manage these two screens together. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Thank you, Seth. And thank you, Dave. That was a great, really, I think, detailed view into kind of how we see data standards and in particular, kind of the cloud-based, GIS-based technologies really enabling municipal MS4 permit holders to build in the capability, the capacity to, among other things, satisfy the e-reporting rule. So my name is Jason Yoho. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Second Nature, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the value of enterprise data standards. So I'm gonna add the word enterprise to it as it relates to the MS4 compliance and reporting. I spent 15 years in Silicon Valley, most of my career helping industries understand how to adopt the cloud. So I would say that there's a digital transformation happening kind of at all scales of government right now. And what we are seeing is, the cloud adoption has really been accelerated, obviously, by the COVID tragedy, but it also represents a wonderful opportunity, the cloud does, to put standards in place and adopt technological best practices as government goes through this transition. It reminds me a lot of the transition that the healthcare industry went through not that long ago. When we went to the doctor, we found, the doctor had to kind of get our records, right? It was a fax, it was an email or something like that. Of course, today, that's no longer the case. You go to your doctor's office and they have easy access to your records online. A little bit about Second Nature to help you understand where we're coming from and how we are developing a perspective on the industry to we build an open cloud platform. It's integrated with ESRI's GIS technology, and it's for running stormwater programs and measuring program effectiveness and compliance reporting. Second Nature is an early stage technology company. We were founded in 2016. We're just over the hill from Silicon Valley in Santa Cruz, California. We now have customers in 12 states. So we're growing very rapidly. We have over 100,000 structural assets that are being managed for various stormwater programs within our system with a very high value of those assets. So we have a lot of data, a lot of information that really form the best practices that are shaping how we're thinking about data standards and how those enable e-reporting. Real quickly, I think the secret of our success is not just the cloud and GIS, but it's also that our methodologies and our models are based on science. Our founder and CEO, Nicole Beck, is a PhD in aquatic chemistry, and she really got her start working up in the Lake Tahoe Basin and the Keep Tahoe Blue project, trying to develop methods and models to understand water quality benefits for BMPs over time. We do hold ourselves to a very high standard from a science standpoint. We peer review and publish our science in scientific journals. In addition, of course, we believe in partnering. We know that it takes a lot of people to successfully run a program. Digital transformation, embracing cloud technologies is not about replacing people. It's not about replacing partners. In fact, we rely, and it relies very heavily on partners. Data standards, of course, have many benefits, but at the core of the issue is the intent of the MS4 permit, which is to measure the effectiveness of the program at reducing pollution and runoff. To accomplish that, we need to be able to trust our data. We would say we need to have certainty in our data, and that certainty is based on methods that are statistically accurate and easily verifiable. Those are the foundation for trust. If we back up for a minute, and I'm going to try and go quickly here to meet Seth's deadline, if we unpack this need, it of course is driven by the regulation as represented in the permit, but what we've learned at second nature is that it's truly an enterprise requirement for data standards. So let's talk about that for a minute. And what is an enterprise data requirement? Well, the MS4 business need touches multiple types of systems: information systems, operational support systems, business support systems, and therefore relies on data and workflows across all of those. So it's a very comprehensive data requirement that is more than just data about specific BMPs or specific assets. From a compliance perspective, of course, that data needs to be easily reported and verified. From a business system, there's a requirement to measure, right? We can't improve what we cannot measure. From an operational perspective, we need to use that data to do our work. We need to manage our work. We have time frame requirements around things. And from an asset perspective, of course, it's about location, condition, and informing the other minimum control requirements of the permit. Stormwater programs, of course, have grown up over decades, relying on information systems and workflows, primarily from other municipal departments. It is difficult, it's expensive and inefficient to run a distributed program and distributed assets without a centralized system. And we all know, therefore, that there is a lot of complexity, there's a lot of cost, and frankly, sometimes there's just a lot of difficulty in being able to demonstrate effectiveness of programs. So we need to establish priorities, establish metrics to be able to do that. Data standards help break down those barriers and information silos. By moving to the cloud, starting in the bottom left-hand corner, we start to centralize programmatic and asset-related information in a way that's easily accessible. That enables us to start looking at workflows and work management, shifting over to the right a little bit, thinking about where are the opportunities to take out manual processes and automate and make things more scalable and easier to operate. Those things, of course, then present a foundation for really driving alignment for programs and ultimately plugging into other data systems at the state regulator level or even at the e-reporting level. So the picture is one of an enterprise vertical industry requirement: information, operations, business requirements with high stakes. There's regulatory compliance that's best serviced by aligning technology choices with a long-term architectural vision. By defining the requirement accurately and embracing best-in-class technology and standards, you start to enable your program to shift from a complex cost center, relying on data services from other municipal departments, to a digital service delivery model, one that allows you to communicate program effectiveness and to quickly and easily demonstrate and report compliance. The inverse of trust, of course, to a degree, is risk. We can see how data is generated using and used at each layer of your program systems. The nature of data, of course, is that it's not static. Therefore, there's inherent risk in doing nothing. As your program's generating more data, as you're using it to inform your program at every level, without a data standard, risk is actually growing, right? Data risk is either increasing or decreasing. And what we found is for many programs who haven't embraced the set of technology standards yet, that risk is increasing on a daily basis. And so if you get your data off the shelf, what you want to invest in is into producing the capability to transition from a static to a dynamic data environment. Of course, it's evolving. It's a target. It's not a final destination. I think Dave did a wonderful job describing how we all collaborate, how you all are a part of that collaboration. And as your business needs change, as your permit and your workflows evolve, the standard's going to evolve with it. The commercial pathway provides a scalable framework for iteration and ultimately really is the shortest path to high confidence in demonstrating your program effectiveness and being ready for the e-reporting rule. And then lastly, as we increase transparency and access to data and information, we really start enabling our industry to focus on the outcome, which is how our stormwater programs creating more cleaner and healthier communities. And that's it, Seth. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Sorry, it's not really my deadline. It's the deadline that we all talked about here. So sorry for impinging upon any limitations for you, but we'll have time for conversation at the end. That's what we want to make sure, because there have been a number of questions that have come in. And I think this arc again of e-reporting, now we've heard about the technology and how the platform, and then the work with someone who's in the industry with Second Nature ties in, is very helpful. Now we're going to hear about on the ground. One of the things that questions that came up, Randy, and this ties in to you as well as to Second Nature and ESRI actually. So I'm going to ask it now and see if it's something that you can either address on the front end or we can have a discussion later. But there was a question that came in on the awareness on the Metro GIS Stormwater Geodata project in Minnesota. So a question came in on that, and I think that we're all aware of that. I didn't know whether you guys want to talk about. You can talk about Randy now, or we can also address it later as well. So I am going to pass the controls on to you, Randy, and let me know if there's any problems with that. Excellent. We can see it. Looks good. I will disappear now.
Okay. Thanks, Seth. So I'm Randy Neprash. I'm talking from the Twin Cities in Minnesota. As Seth said, I am the vice chair of NMSA. I am also the staff person for the Minnesota Cities Stormwater Coalition, and I work for Stantec Consulting as well. Interesting. Hold on one second. I have to arrange so I can see. There we go. So this is, oh, Seth, can I not go backwards?
No, you should be able to.
Okay, so this is exciting stuff, and it's a big step forward for MS4 permittees everywhere, especially compared to printed reports, the haystack that Kerry talked about in his presentation. This means that all of us, many local programs, are accustomed to generating sometimes significant reports sending them into a state or federal agency, and then feeling reasonably confident and not necessarily very happy that they're liable never to be read. And this is the beginning of the change in that process. This is moving from, say, text-based electronic forms to something more sophisticated, and it means that our reports will be processed and that the information in those reports can be useful and meaningful in a number of different contexts. One of them is that we will see an increase toward compliance accountability, something every local program will need to keep in mind as this moves forward. Another aspect of it, though, is there is a powerful story to be told. MS4 permittees throughout the country are doing good, important, significant work that the story, both quantitative and aggregated narrative stories of that work, are simply not being collected and told. They're not being told to the public. Perhaps more significantly, they're not being told to decision makers like state legislatures and Congress. And those stories are important. Both of these processes are steps toward being able to collect that information efficiently and tell those stories. So these steps are combined with other developments in the stormwater world. One of those is the MS4 remand rule, federal rule stating that MS4 permit conditions and requirements need to be clear, specific, and measurable. Those concepts serve as the foundation for some of this e-reporting. One of the distinctive elements of the MS4 program is the maximum extent practicable legal standard. And to be perfectly honest, I and NMSA are not really clear exactly how that will fit into this whole process, and we'll have to see how that develops over time. These two processes really fit together. New stormwater data standards linked to e-reporting with EPA. It will enable tracking and reporting on progress that MS4 permittees are making toward meeting TMDL waste load allocations. And then, as you're seeing with software programs like Second Nature, these new developments will align with software packages that will combine stormwater asset management systems with water quality modeling and the quantification of pollutant load reductions, again, in the context of TMDL waste load allocations and such. As all this moves forward, and almost everybody today before me has talked about the engagement of stakeholders in these processes. And NMSA obviously hopes to continue to work with EPA, also ESRI and Second Nature in these processes. NMSA is a structure and framework to enable local MS4 programs to be engaged in these national level developments in our sector. We will continue to work on outreach, training, and education for permittees, like this webinar today. And then we want to encourage MS4 permittees to work closely with their state agencies. The e-reporting will be based on state permit requirements and conditions. So coalitions, groups of permittees in each state will need to work with their state agencies, and we want to encourage and see that happen. I wanted to talk, Seth had mentioned this as a question, this movement in this direction is more widespread and, let's say, more organic than you may have seen in just this webinar today. And one example of this is the Metro Stormwater Geodata project that's been underway here in Minnesota, the 7-county Twin Cities metropolitan area, for the last 3 years with a number of significant stakeholders and a broad group of public, private sector stakeholders moving toward developing stormwater data standards. This text is lifted from the Geodata Project website, and it's worth considering the purposes and intent of this effort. So it's for flow modeling, conflict detection, to facilitate data integration between GIS and asset management systems, and to assist in identifying asset ownership and maintenance responsibilities. More interesting, though, is the long-term vision for this. So just in the metropolitan area here in Minnesota, this project intends to move forward to federate data to create a regional stormwater system data set across the entire metropolitan region. That gives you some of an example of the power that these systems and measures are moving toward for the stormwater sector. And with that, I am done, and I will hand it back to you, Seth. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Randy. I'm going to then bring it back to my screen. And okay, so actually, if everybody, all the panelists, can unmute themselves and show your webcam, that'd be great. So we can have questions. We have a number of questions that have come in already. So I wanted to just start kind of going down this pathway. A couple that are specifically targeted to you, Carrie, and I wanted to hit those early, since I think that's the real focus of what we're talking about today. One question, and I think these are easily addressed. That's another reason to do this. One question is there a list of states that will use NET or be developing their own software? So this question actually came out of Texas. So I think folks want to know, like, is there a state developing their own, or are they using NET? What's the situation on that?
Yeah, let me, if it could, just let me share my screen. I think this will be beneficial for everyone.
Give me 1 second. There you go.
All right, share my screen. Share screen 2. All right, can you see my screen?
No, I can't. Oh, there it is. No, there it is. Just took there's a little delay.
Okay, so you start with our public access website. It's called ECHO. So it's echo.epa.gov. Click Analyze Trends. Click on NIPD's e-rule dashboards, that nice little link right there. And you're going to want to go to the Phase 2 implementation dashboard, this one right here. And the reason for that is, at a glance, you'll be able to see which states are going to use EPA's electronic reporting tools and which ones are going to be building their own. So it's preloaded to show you the states that are going to use EPA's tool. So our software is called NET. So it's preloaded with NET equals yes. And if I select this roadmap category for MS4s, for some reason it's a little slow. And there we go. You'll see the 19 permits, 9 are issued by EPA, 10 are issued by the states. So mostly states where EPA runs the program: Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Puerto Rico, Delaware, Mississippi. These are the actual permits. New Mexico. Texas is not here. Texas is going to build their own tool for the general permit, but hang on, there's also a compliance monitoring report associated with the MS4 sector. So that's the second tab. You see that program report tab there. And if you go down here, select that, you can see if I scroll down to the list, you can actually see Texas is kind of like a split. They're going to build their own tool for collecting the NOI or any general permit data. But then when it comes time for the annual report, Texas is going to use NET.
I see. Okay, so that's great. Thank you. And the point is that this is not straightforward necessarily. So you're going to be working with state. You're working state by state by state by state. So this is an ongoing, a rolling process that's coming through. Okay. So I just want to make sure that everyone doesn't think that one day there's nothing, then next day there's going to be all 50 states are going to be figured out.
Yeah. So in fact, it might be good to show you. We have. So here's
this.
oh,
That's why we got a 5-year program.
So we just wanted to show you that we have wireframes that are specific to Rhode Island.
There's a little bit of a delay.
And then we have another set of wireframes that are specific to Delaware, as an example. So yes, it's going to be, what's going to happen is over time, these states are going to be migrated onto the application.
Okay. A couple more questions for you. And if we don't get to all these questions, then we will try to get them answered by the panelists after the fact. So I want to jump around a little bit. Dave and Jason, I was wondering, just in the context of all of that we're seeing here, what do you see ESRI and Second Nature's role in this process of e-reporting? Just like very succinctly, specifically, or is this has yet to be determined?
Go ahead, Jason, if you want to go first.
Yeah, either way. It's a good question. I mean, it's still evolving, I would say, is the short answer, Seth, right? As the stormwater industry is looking to to make investment in their capacity and capability to satisfy the reporting requirement, we're going to be a part of that conversation. So that's the short answer. I think the slightly longer answer is, architecturally, I'm sure the vision here is that there will be some data level integration between all these systems, right? And that, MS4 investment in their own capability is going to feed into state level systems, which will feed into the EPA level systems. And so I see Second Nature, and to that extent, we'll transition it over to Dave to answer, but ESRI playing a role in providing kind of the commercial pathway to adopting those things.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Jason. I mean, that it's going to evolve, and GIS is primarily focused from a stormwater perspective on the infrastructure assets. Some of the other things that stormwater agencies do and the type of data that they collect aren't necessarily stored in the GIS as a system record. That might be stored in a LIMS database, for example, and what Jason said about some of the standardization of those assets will make it easier to then integrate with some of the other systems where they serve as the system of record for that data. So, so longer term, it really is about how these systems can most easily integrate on the basis of some of these standards.
Great, thank you. It's interesting because we're on this arc of maturation, right? This is going to take some time. This is, you don't flip a switch, right? So I just want folks to know that if they haven't gone yet, they will be, and if they're not there, then that's, there's a lot who are in that same position, I think. But the value to an organization like NMSA about a data standard that ties in also with an e-reporting rule, which seems like a driver here, is if we can have more standardized data sets, then we can more readily understand what assets do we have across the country. So I do hope that as this goes along, we have more standardized data assets. And I guess there's a tie into that, the Minnesota thing that's going on. And Randy, I wanted to go back to one of your statements about, I'm not sure legally about, I'm not trying to poke the hornet's nest here, but I do think it's something that there, a lot of folks might be scratching their head about. Hey, how do we, you kind of teased us a little bit about there might be some issues here. And we do have Rachel Urban available, I think. And if there's a question on that, do you want to explore that a little bit further so that we can put people at ease, maybe, hopefully, or maybe not? So any thoughts about the legal aspects of things that you had in mind? I know we don't have time to cover everything, but.
This is a rare occasion, Seth, that you ask me to put people at ease about almost anything.
That's true.
And I'm not sure I can. One of the real challenges in the MS4 program, and Carrie described this. I mean, he presented some information about how this works on the wastewater side. Things are pretty well behaved on the wastewater side. It's numeric. You can report numbers, and then you can see compliance pretty easily. You can build a program that flags when you have exceedances. The MS4 program, like stormwater, is just not that well behaved. There's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more variation from state to state. It's essentially BMP based rather than numeric. And it's just going to be interesting to see exactly how it plays out. The good news is we have some time, and we'll be able to see how it's going to play out. With that said, the states have been moving toward these clear, specific, and measurable permit conditions, and that will be a factor in this process as well. Yep. So that's as close to assurance as you're going to get from me, Seth.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you. Rachel, do you have any thoughts? I don't mean to put you on the spot on this, but Rachel, have you had any thoughts about how, working with Carrie's group and, in the background that you have on the MS4 sector, any thoughts about, how MS4 should prepare, or any thoughts about the regulatory environment as it ties in with the e-reporting rule and MS4s?
I mean, I think, and I'm joined by Greg Shaner, he's on the phone, so I'll pause after I speak and see if he has anything to add to what I say. I think, the permit is what's going to indicate for Carrie and others at the states that he's working with what goes into the system, what the options will be. And I don't, I think that Carrie has been very diligent in reaching out to us and, the headquarters program, to, our regional folks, to state folks, and trying to make sure that the totality of the programs that you are currently implementing and that you may be, doing in the future are considered as they're building the system that would then take the data sets and the information. I think moving in this direction gives us a lot of valuable information too that we have to think about as well. Like you were mentioning, Seth and Randy too, we don't have really robust national data sets because we are all doing things a little bit, differently, and that's okay. The program was set up to allow for those flexibilities, but I think moving in this direction will not only help us to have information to better describe what's happening out there, all the great things that you guys are doing to make a difference in your communities, but really to showcase with others as well. So I don't know if I fully answered your question. I'm going to pause to see if Greg has something to add.
Okay. Yeah, well, as you're pausing to, oh yeah, great, good to hear you, Greg.
Okay. Hey, folks. Rachel, you said it great. I think from a regulatory perspective, I think the main thing to say, and Randy hit on this too, it's what we're looking for in the e-reporting rule is to kind of take from your permit requirements those clear, specific, and measurable attributes. For instance, if you're required to meet with the public a certain number of times, that would be an element that we would want to hear that the permittee should be reporting on when they submit their annual report. So going through those permits, and Carrie's working on this now with the different states, is pulling out those elements that are clear, specific, and measurable, and having them electronically reported. And that's not easy to do in an MS4 permit because, as Randy said, these are not, they're just a different animal than most other NPDES permits. But I just wanted to hit on the point that the e-reporting part of it isn't adding new requirements. But it's really trying to just have electronically reported what's already in your permit. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that process, Greg, I think the devil's in the details. I'll say that much, right? Because while the information is similar, how it's stated, this is just the start of this conversation. And I think we'll probably discover more as we go through this. Carrie, a couple other quick questions on process that I wanted to hit, because I think there's a lot of questions that have come in on that. One is very obvious and something that I'm kicking myself for not trying to clarify early on. It says, will there be a separate report form for phase 1 MS4s versus phase 2 MS4s? Will there be a different e-reporting process, I guess?
I don't think so, no. We're, at least on our application, it'll be one program service, one application. And obviously the phase 1 MS4s don't submit an NOI. They have their own individual permit. So that states have the option of continuing to collect those individual permit applications on paper, but everyone will be submitting their annual report electronically. And at least on our end, it'll be the same application.
So there's no, it's not like there's a phase 1 e-reporting pathway and a phase 2. And when I say you're using your own phase 1 and phase 2 within your, so that makes this all confusing, but phase 1 MS4, phase 2, all the information that's going to be collected at the end of the day is the same.
Correct.
As far as you know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially what happens is it's a different, two different ways of getting permit coverage. Through the general permit, you submit an NOI. Through the individual permit, you submit a paper form, but the result is the same. The permit will specify what are the requirements, and then the annual report will ask the permittee to confirm if there is compliance with those permit requirements.
Okay, and that's really the bottom line for all what we're talking about here. Okay, and the last really quick question, and I think we're going to be about done. And again, we'll follow up with send these questions off to the panelists too for their review as well. What if a state's been collecting data on their own? Can they just do a data dump, or is that more of a detailed question that's going to vary by state, and it's hard to answer that concisely here?
Yeah, no. What's going to happen is, as I've said a couple times, states can build their own tools to collect this MS4 data. That's fine. But the electronic reporting rule lays out some standards for the data and will require states to share that data that they collect with us starting no later than December of 2025. So take California as an example. California may stand up their own electronic reporting tool for the MS4 sector. They might do that in 2023, and then they have some time to work out the kinks of sharing that data with us with the due date of December of 2025.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thanks for that. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for everyone joining us. Thanks to Greg, who's probably in the summer in the middle of Pennsylvania or wherever he is. I appreciate that. Thanks to Rachel for joining us as well from EPA, and Carrie from EPA, and Dave Watchell from ESRI, and Jason from Second Nature, and always Randy Neprash with NMSA and Minnesota. And again, I wanted to reiterate, this is the beginning of this conversation. We will be following up to try to provide information that's valuable to MS4 program managers. And again, a recording of this is going to be made available. There'll be an email goes out to everybody with a link to that. So just wanted to keep on getting questions on that. I just wanted to reiterate that's the case. So again, I'm gonna wrap up now. Thanks for everybody being here today, and hope everyone has a great rest of the week and weekend, and we'll talk to you sometime soon. See you guys.